What if we took that big open string sound we get from cowboy chords and we paired it with that drive and energy of a power chord? And then on top of that, we sprinkled in a bunch of those extra flavors and notes that are most commonly used in modern worship music. What if we put all three of those together? What would we get? Well, we get what I think is the most important kind of chord that you can know if you're playing electric guitar in modern worship music, and that's the anchor position open chord. These kind of chords are so important because they're easy to play. You can play them all from one hand position on your guitar. And by playing all these chords in the same spot, the chords sound like they all belong together. And probably most importantly, these chords can handle the drive and energy that we need from an electric guitar. I know these chords can sound too good to be true, but for those of us making that transition from acoustic guitar to electric, these chords are a godsend, I'm telling you. And if you hang on with me for a few minutes, I want to show you how these work in our big 5 guitar keys, C, A, G, E, and D. So grab your guitar and let's get started. So we're using our caged keys today, C, A, G, E, and D. And I'm going to be using the big 4 chords from each of these keys. That's the 1, 4, 5, and 6 position chords in our major keys. I'm using these today because these are the chords that we play 90-95% of the time when we're playing modern worship music. If you want to see how I use the entire key, I have all those available in my chord PDF. All right, so I'm going to go key by key and do a breakdown of how you can use these chords and some ways that you can modify them to make them easier to play and sound a little different. But first, let me just show you how these chords sound in each of the keys. So let's start with the key of G. Let's go to the key of C. I'm going to show you a couple options in C, but I'll do my favorite one. All right, let's go to the key of E. And the key of D. And finally, the key of A. Now, as I'm playing this, you may see that something looks a little strange. Maybe these chords sound different than the shape appears. Well, hang with me for that explanation in A, and I'll walk you through what I'm doing here. All right, so that was the 1, 4, 5, and 6 chord in each of those major keys. If this is your first time seeing these key of G shapes, blessed art thou. I love these G shapes. You're gonna see players using these all the time. Now, let me do a comparison from what the standard major and minor chords would be in this key compared to these anchor positions. So here are the standard chords. All right, to play each of these chord progressions, we're going to use an anchor position, meaning we're going to keep our fingers playing certain notes throughout the entire progression. So for the key of G, we're going to come to our 3rd fret, and we're going to take our 3rd and 4th finger and put them right down here on these 2 strings. So just playing those would sound like this. This is where the power and the drive is going to come from in all these chords. And then what we're going to do is make changes on the top of these chords. So in the key of G, our 1 chord is the G. So I'm going to take my 2nd finger up here to the 3rd fret, and make sure when you're playing these notes that you can get your fingers up towards the top of the fret as much as possible. We don't want to wander down this way. the notes are going to get harder to play and they're not going to sound as good. Now, this is one important feature of all of these chords I'm going to show you. We have to really pay attention to notes that we need to be muting. So my second finger is leaning over. It's not playing this note, as many of you might be used to. I'm leaning this over to mute the string beneath it. Okay, so playing each string one at a time should sound like this. So to play our 4 chord, which is our C, I'm going to take this finger and just move it down right there. And then I'm going to mute this with my thumb. Now, if you can't wrap your thumb around, I know many of you can't do that, that's okay. Can you bring your first finger around at least and touch the top of that string? It's really, really important that we don't play this open E on this chord. And just like the G chord, I'm leaning this finger over to mute the string below it. Each note should sound like this. Now for my D chord in the 5 position, I'm going to put my first finger right here, just like you might be used to doing in your D chord, but we're going to keep our anchor position just like it is. Technically, this is a D sus4. For simplicity's sake, you see that I'm not using the full name of these chords on the diagrams. I have the actual names of these chords in my chord PDF. The big deal right now is that you just get these chord shapes associated with our 1, 4, 5, and 6 position in this key. So our D chord, I'm again going to use my thumb to mute. If you can't do that, try to put your second finger up there to mute. Each note will sound like this. And if you don't like how that D sus4 sounds, you can always drop back and play your normal D if that's what the song calls for. Nothing wrong with that. And now finally our E minor chord, our 6th position. I'm just going to take my first finger and bring it up and play this one string up here. You could play both of these, but when we have heavy drive on our guitar, we really want to reduce the amount of notes we're playing. So I have no problem muting strings. So now we can open up this E string on top, and this is what each string will sound like. Let's play all 4 again. G, C, D, and E minor. Now let me show you 2 ways to play in the key of C. In this first set of shapes, our anchor position is just going to be our first finger playing this note right here. But now this is important. I'm going to lean this finger over and mute this high E string below it. And then for our C chord, we have a lot of muting involved here. I'm going to bring my 3rd finger over just like we normally would with a C. It's leaning over and muting the string underneath it. And I'm muting on the top here, this E string up here. So this is all 6 strings. Now in this shape, we're only playing 3 notes, and this is technically a power chord. It just might not be the shape that some of you are used to. Our 4 chord is the F major. All we're gonna do is add this finger right there. I'm still muting up here with my thumb or my middle finger. And then for my G, I'm just going to take this finger right here and bring it up here and lean it over to mute the string underneath it. You're going to see this a lot. Each note. And then finally our 6th chord, which is the A minor. I'm going to bring my 2nd finger up. This is maybe a shape you already know. But remember, we're going to keep leaning this first finger over to mute that high E string. So now with my thumb still muting the E, each note sounds like this. Now, if you wanted that darker minor tone, you could add this finger here and just get the A minor. But this is an A minor 7th, and you'll see this in most of these 6 chords that I'm using. That flat 7 or that minor 7 is very common in the 6th chord in modern worship music. Each of those notes. And all 4 of those chords again. C, F, G, and A minor. Now, I love those if I want more of a power chord kind of sound. But if I want to span more of the octave, I'm going to add a higher note in here with my 4th finger. So our anchor position in this other set of shapes looks like this. So you can hear that big high power chord ringing out in there the whole time. Now, before I play these, what I'm about to show you is a bit of a stretch. And some of you, I know your hands aren't going to be able to do this, but here's the thing. Stay with me and listen in on the key of A. I'm doing something really unique in that key, which allows us, and this is what's fun, it allows us to play these chords that I'm playing here by using the key of G shapes that we played earlier. So just hang around in the key of A, and we'll deal with that then. So here's my C chord. Just like before, I'm leaving my 3rd finger here, muting both above that note and below it. What a massive chord. 4 chord, the F, just adding this finger. 5 chord, I'm bringing my 3rd finger up. This is the thing that probably is the most difficult. This stretch from 1st finger to 2nd here. And then our A minor. All 4 together. Now I like the key of D because I could play this 3rd finger here and lean it over and mute this string behind it. That's one way to do it. Or I could open up this E string and let that ring out through the chords to add a little more complexity. I'll leave that up to you, which sounds better in the song. But for now, I'm gonna lean my finger over to mute this string underneath it. And our anchor position is gonna be 1st finger here and our 3rd finger there. Okay, so our D chord then would be muting our E string again. Basically, if it's not called E, I don't want to play this open E string on top. Here's each note of my D chord. And then for my G, all I'm going to do is take my 2nd finger here and bring it over and play this G note in the bass. And again, like before, I'm leaning it over to mute that string below it. So it should sound like this. Now for our next 2 chords, the A major and B minor, we're still going to play these 2 notes in the anchor position, but we need to switch our 1st and 2nd finger around. Our 2nd finger is going to come up and play this note to free this one up. So for our A, this one's going to come up and play right here. I'm muting my E string on top. Each note sounds like this. And then my switch to my B minor is really easy. All I'm going to do is take this 1st finger that was here and put it up right there. Now, some of you who can't mute with your thumb right here, you might find this a little difficult. You can play this note like this and run your 1st finger up to touch and run into this E string on top. That would be one way to mute that string on top. It might take some getting used to both mute the one on top and the one below it. with that first finger. So this is each note of our B minor chord. So all four together. So let's open up that E string and see how it sounds. I like using that E when I want to add just a little bit more complexity and get some bigger open string sound from those chords. Now, in order to play our next chords in the key of E, what we're gonna have to do is get our hand used to playing in a different kind of position. So this is a little trick I use. Go ahead, take your hand and have your palm facing towards you like this, and bend it at the wrist like this. And then put your thumb underneath like a sock puppet, like that. That shape right there, you should feel it in the back of your hand a little bit. That's the shape we're gonna use to play this E position here. Now, everybody's hand is a little different, and your hand will adjust to the shape. But for some of you, this might be really challenging at first, but you will get it, I promise. And here's the good thing about it. If you can play these chords, you're one step closer to playing power chords and bar chords. So for the key of E, our anchor position is gonna be this fourth finger right here on our fourth fret of our G string. So the bottom three strings will sound like this the whole time. And then on top for my E chord, I'm gonna have my first finger come and play this note here. Now, I flatten my finger so I can have both of these notes. If you can't flatten your finger, that's totally okay. The one note we really want though is this one right there. So if I'm only playing this note and muting the one underneath it, each note should sound like this. Our A chord is our 4. So I'm just gonna take this finger and move it down to this note here. We're gonna open up our A string here, and this is still gonna stay up here in mute. Now for our B, we're gonna play a good old power chord shape for this. My first finger is gonna come back up to this note, and my third finger is gonna play right here. Now this is where you're really probably gonna feel it in the back of your hand. My middle finger is gonna stay muting here, and now I have. And then my 6th chord is the C sharp minor. All I'm gonna do is switch these two fingers around. This one is coming up here, and this one is going back here. And this guy's staying up there. Each note. Here's all 4 chords. Now, one other place you can play in the key of E is to take that power chord shape that we were playing and move it up here to the 7th fret. This is our E chord. And just like we did for our A before, we're gonna bring this finger down, come right here, pull our 3rd finger off with our middle finger muting. Now for our B chord, I'm gonna bring my 3rd and 4th finger back to where it was here, and my 1st finger is gonna come up here, and it's gonna lean over and mute the string below it. And then for my 6th chord, my C sharp minor, I'm gonna bring my 2nd finger up and play this bass note right there, which again is gonna lean over and mute the string underneath it. all four of those. Now, I gotta be honest with you, out of the caged keys, the key I like least is the key of A. It just doesn't let me do as much in A as I can in the other keys. But to stay consistent with this anchor position theme that we have in our other four keys, I've done something a little different to this key, and I'll tell you what, I love this, both on acoustic and electric. What I've done, now don't run away when I say this, what I've done is I've taken my B string and I've tuned it down to an A. So hand position is really important for these four chords. My second, third, and fourth finger are sort of going to be assigned to these strings here. And so let's start with the A position. You can use your thumb to mute, or if you want to use this second finger to mute the E, that works too. And each string. Isn't that huge open A sound? So for the D chord, the 4, all I'm going to do, I'm going to keep my middle finger up here. I'm going to remove this finger and just pull it off. Fourth finger stays right where it is. Now you don't have to play this open A. You can just play the bottom 4 strings. It still gets a pretty big sound there. Now for our 5 chord, well, that's an E major, and we're really in the position to play the full E major chord if we wanted to. And with this alternate tuning, it sounds really cool. We're getting some really great dissonance in that voicing. But to keep the power theme that we have through these other keys, I'm just going to lean my third finger over to mute the G string underneath it. And then finally, my 6th chord, my F sharp minor, just like we did in the key of E, I'm going to put my 3rd and my 4th finger back here, and my 2nd finger is going to come up now and play this F sharp note in the bass, leaning over to mute the string underneath it. So now I have. Now listen to all 4 of those. I love it. Now, if you saw me walk through the key of C, you saw that we did this shape right here. I love how it sounds, but man, is this hard. And I know many of you can't get your hand to do this. But if we retuned our B down to an A, we now have new possibilities. And we're going to use the shapes that we used previously in the key of G. Our anchor position in the key of C was just like this. But now when we retune our string, now it's just these 2 notes right here. Hey, we've seen that before. So for our C chord, I'd put my 2nd finger here, and I'd mute the top just like I normally do, and the string underneath it, and each string would be. For the F in our 4 position, now I'm going to take these 2 fingers and play the notes together here, which is kind of weird because we're putting all 4 fingers in this fret. If this is really hard for you to do, this is the note we want most, that note right there. But those together sound like. Our G is just like we played it before. We're going to bring our 2nd finger up and play right here. And then our A minor, our 6th position is super easy. We're going to take our 1st finger right here on the D string on the 2nd fret. And with our thumb, mute here, or our middle finger, mute the E. So all 4 of those together. Now, along with the key of A major and the key of C major, in my PDF, I have a full video on how I use it in the key of A minor. In the key of A minor, this tuning allows us to create all kinds of really complex chords. It sounds really beautiful. Check that out. All right, so what's the principle behind these anchor position open chords? What makes them the way they are? Well, the idea is this. Whatever key we're in, we're going to take the 5th of that key and put that in the high end as our anchor position. So let me explain. In the key of G, the 5th of the 1 chord is the G note and the D note, the 1 and the 5. So in the key of G, we play D note here and the G note here. And so the whole time we have this 1 chord power sound ringing out in the high end. And then when you add the bass notes, so it helps all the chords sort of sound like they belong together, but it also keeps that drivenness to the chord that sounds so great on electric guitar. And so every one of these keys does this. In the key of C, if we leaned over and muted our high E string here, well, these two, this is our G and this is our C. That's our 5th in the key of C. And when we played this note here, well, that's a G as well. So that's a 5th on top. And really the bottom 3 strings are a power chord. In the key of E, we already have our open strings, our E and our B note, that 5th of the 1 chord in our open strings. By putting our finger here, we're just adding that B note again to that 3-note combo. Just making it resonate that much more. In the key of D, we leaned over our 3rd finger and muted this high E string. And so these 2 notes here are the 5th of that D chord, the 1 chord. And of course, we just changed chords on top of that. And then in the key of A, when we retuned this B string down to an A, we now have an A and an E. That's a 5th on our highest 2 strings. Well, guys, I hope those chords are going to help you in your electric guitar journey. I know they did mine. If you have any questions, you can always shoot them to me at cj@don'tgiveup.pro. At our website, don'tgiveup.pro, we have all kinds of classes and free courses. Make sure to go check that out. And before you go and take these chords and have a bunch of fun with them, remember, the only thing more fun than playing these chords is turning around and teaching somebody else how to do it as well. Guys, we'll see you next time.